The love you crave is the very poison that keeps you empty. You sit there, surrounded by those who claim to adore you, yet something gnaws at your chest, a hollow ache that no amount of affection can fill. They tell you how wonderful you are, how much they need you, how lost they'd be without you. And still you feel like a ghost haunting your own life. This isn't tragedy, this is revelation. The emptiness you feel isn't despite being loved. It's because of how you've been taught to receive love. You've been conditioned to believe that love is something that happens to you, something that validates your existence from the outside. But here's what they never told you. The love that comes to fill your emptiness only deepens the void, because it confirms your most fundamental lie, that you are incomplete. The cup that seeks to be filled will always remain empty, no matter how much water you pour into it, because the very act of seeking to be filled is what creates the hole. They gather around you with their affections like moths to a flame, but you feel nothing. Their words of love bounce off you like rain on stone. Their embraces feel like shackles. Their devotion feels like a burden you never asked to carry, and in the quiet moments when their voices fade and their touch withdraws, you're left alone with the terrible truth. All this love and still you are drowning in emptiness. You think something is wrong with you. You think you're broken, ungrateful, incapable of receiving what others freely give. But what if the opposite is true? What if your emptiness isn't a flaw, but wisdom? What if your inability to be satisfied by their love isn't dysfunction, but your soul's refusal to accept a counterfeit? Look at how desperately they need to be needed. Watch how frantically they seek validation through their giving. Notice how their love always comes with invisible strings, silent contracts, unspoken demands. They love you not because you are lovable, but because loving you makes them feel better about themselves. Their affection is not a gift, it's a transaction, and your soul knows the difference. The emptiness isn't evidence that you're missing something. It's evidence that you're refusing to accept something that was never real in the first place. Your void isn't a wound, it's a boundary. Your hunger isn't pathology, it's discernment. You feel empty because you've been offered fool's gold and your authentic self is too wise to be fooled. From the moment you drew your first breath, they taught you that love was conditional. Smile and they beam, cry and they frown, achieve and they celebrate, fail and they withdraw their warmth like the sun disappearing behind clouds. You learned to perform yourself into existence. You discovered that love wasn't a natural state. It was a reward for being good enough, smart enough, attractive enough, successful enough. You internalized the belief that you are fundamentally lacking, and that others must fill this lack through their approval, their desire, their need for you. So you became an expert at being lovable. You sculpted yourself into what others wanted, polished your edges until you gleamed with acceptability. You learned to anticipate their needs before they voiced them, to laugh at their jokes before they finished telling them, to disappear your authentic self so thoroughly that even you forgot where you'd hidden it. You became a master of the dance of neediness, their neediness for your approval, your neediness for theirs. You fed their hunger to be needed and they fed your hunger to be wanted. But hunger feeding hunger creates only more hunger. Need fulfilling, need creates only deeper need. And now, surrounded by all this love you've earned through your careful performance, you wonder why it feels like eating sand. The love you receive cannot nourish you because it isn't really for you. It's for the character you've created. They love your mask, not your face. They adore your function, not your being. You feel empty because the real you, the wild, untamed, unpolished you, remains hidden, unfed, slowly starving in the basement of your consciousness. Every "I love you" they speak is actually, "I love what you do for me." Every embrace is actually, "I embrace the role you play in my story." Every declaration of devotion is actually, "I am devoted to how you make me feel about myself." You sense this deception, even if you can't name it. Your emptiness is your soul's rebellion against the fraud. Your inability to feel fulfilled by their love is your deepest wisdom. refusing to be bought with counterfeit currency. The child in you that was taught to trade authenticity for acceptance is still there, still performing, still believing that love must be earned. But the adult you is beginning to understand something dangerous. Maybe love that must be earned isn't love at all. Watch how they panic when you stop performing. Notice how their love wavers when you refuse to play your assigned role. See how quickly their devotion turns to manipulation when you threaten to be yourself. Their love was never love. It was control wearing the mask of affection. You were taught that your worth comes from outside validation, that your value depends on others' approval, that your very existence needs justification through their acceptance. But here's the secret they never wanted you to discover. The need for their love is what keeps you empty. The hunger for their validation is what creates the void. The seeking itself is what ensures you never find. You've been drinking salt water thinking it would quench your thirst and wondering why you only get thirstier. You've been eating stones thinking they were bread and wondering why you only get hungrier. The emptiness isn't because you lack something. It's because you've been consuming what cannot nourish. Alan Watts understood something that Western psychology struggles to grasp. The very seeking of love from others is what separates us from love itself. He saw that we are not broken vessels waiting to be filled, but rather expressions of the same cosmic energy that moves the stars and grows the trees. The emptiness you feel is not evidence of your inadequacy. It is the space where your authentic self is trying to breathe. In Taoist philosophy, there is the concept of Wu Wei, effortless action that flows from one's natural state rather than from grasping or forcing. When you seek love from others, you're in a state of constant effort, constantly reaching across an imaginary gap between yourself and wholeness. But the gap exists only in your mind. Watts spoke of the fundamental error of Western thought, the belief that we are separate beings in a hostile universe, islands of consciousness floating in an ocean of otherness. But this separation is an illusion, a trick of perspective that makes us believe we are looking at ourselves from the outside. You are not separate from the universe that surrounds you. You are not an observer of life. You are life itself, temporarily. Pretending to be a person, you are not a wave seeking water. You are water, temporarily playing at being a wave. The wave doesn't need to seek the ocean. It is the ocean, expressing itself as a wave, and yet we spend our lives trying to become what we already are. The emptiness is not a void to be filled. It is space to be inhabited. It is not absence. It is pregnant potential. It is not a hole in your being. It is the opening through which being itself flows. When you stop trying to fill the emptiness and instead learn to rest in it, something miraculous happens. You discover that what you thought was emptiness was actually fullness. All along, the ancient Zen masters knew this secret. They spoke of emptiness not as lack, but as the source of all abundance. The empty bowl can hold water. The hollow reed can channel music. The silent mind can hear the whisper of truth. Your emptiness is not your problem. It is your portal. But we've been taught to fear the void, to run from silence, to fill every gap with noise and activity and other people's validation. We've forgotten that emptiness is not the enemy of fullness, it is fullness itself, waiting to be recognized. Watts often spoke of the cosmic game of hide and seek that consciousness plays with itself. The universe pretends to be separate from itself, splits into billions of individual beings, each forgetting their true nature, each seeking to return to what they never actually left. You are not a person trying to find God. You are God playing at being a person who has forgotten they are God. The seeking is the hiding. The searching is what keeps you lost. The very effort to become whole is what maintains the illusion of fragmentation. This is why all the love they pour into you feels empty, because you're trying to use it to become something you already are. In Buddhism, they call this samsara, the wheel of suffering that turns endlessly as long as we believe in the illusion of separation. You suffer not because you lack love, but because you believe you lack love. You feel empty not because you are incomplete, but because you've forgotten your completeness. The path to remembering is not through accumulation, but through recognition. Not through gathering more love from others, but through discovering the love that you are. Not through filling the emptiness, but through recognizing that the emptiness is already full. There is another way to love and be loved, a way that doesn't depend on your performance or their approval. Imagine loving not from emptiness seeking to be filled, but from fullness seeking to overflow. Like the sun, which doesn't shine because it needs something from the planets, but because shining is its nature. Like a river that doesn't flow because it's trying to reach the ocean, but because flowing is what rivers do. This is love that arises from abundance rather than scarcity. Love that gives because it cannot help but give, not because it hopes to receive something in return. Love that doesn't need to be returned because it was never lent in the first place. When you love from this place of inner completeness, something extraordinary happens. The emptiness dissolves, not because someone else has filled it, but because you realize there was never anything to fill. The whole was always an illusion, a trick of perspective that made you believe you were looking at absence when you were actually looking at the space where everything emerges. From this fullness, your relationships transform. Instead of needing others to complete you, you meet them as whole beings meeting other whole beings. Instead of performing for love, you simply love. Instead of seeking validation, you become a source of it. Instead of drawing from others' energy, you become a fountain that nourishes itself and everything around it. The people who love this version of you love something real, something that doesn't depend on your constant maintenance and performance. They love the you that exists whether they're watching or not, whether they approve or not, whether they understand or not. This is the virtue of self-completion, not selfishness, but the recognition that you are already what you've been seeking. Not narcissism, but the understanding that loving yourself isn't vanity, it's responsibility. When you stop looking for yourself in other people's eyes, you finally see clearly. You become like a tree that doesn't strain toward the sun because it knows the sun is already within it. Like a flower that doesn't beg the earth for permission to bloom because it understands that blooming is not something it does, it's something it is. This love doesn't come from gratitude for what others give you. It comes from the recognition that you are already the gift, not because you've earned it or achieved it or deserved it, but because existence itself is the gift, and you are existence itself, temporarily wearing the costume of a human being. From this recognition, love becomes effortless, not because you've stopped caring, but because you've stopped grasping. Not because you've become indifferent, but because you've discovered that the love you were seeking outside was always inside, waiting for you to stop looking away from it. When you love from wholeness rather than neediness, your very presence becomes a blessing. People feel peaceful around you not because you're trying to make them feel good, but because you're not trying to take anything from them. They feel safe with you not because you promise never to hurt them, but because you're not using them to fill some void in yourself. This is love without agenda, affection without manipulation, intimacy without possessiveness. This is the love that the mystics spoke of, unconditional not because it loves everything equally, but because it loves from a place beyond conditions, beyond the need for reasons or rewards. You stop saying, "I love you," and start being love itself. You stop seeking love and start recognizing that seeking was the only thing standing between you and what you were seeking. You stop trying to become lovable and start resting in the love that you are. The paradox is complete. Only by giving up the search for love do you find love. Only by accepting the emptiness do you discover the fullness. Only by being alone do you realize you were never alone. Only by needing nothing do you have everything, but even this realization must die. Even the most beautiful understanding becomes a prison if you cling to it. Even the truest insights become lies if you turn them into fixed identities. The ego that once sought love from others can just as easily become the ego that prides itself on needing no one. There comes a time when you must let go of even your enlightenment, when you must release even your wisdom, when you must die to even your most precious truths. The river that knows it is water must still flow into the ocean and disappear. This is the silence that Watts spoke of, not the absence of sound, but the pregnant quiet that exists before and after all noise. The emptiness that is not lacking, but overflowing. The stillness that is not static but vibrantly alive. In this silence you discover that love was never something you could possess or be possessed by. Love is not a thing but a happening, not a noun but a verb, not a destination but a way of traveling. You cannot hold it any more than you can hold the wind, and yet it moves through you constantly, like breath. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is withdraw. Sometimes the deepest intimacy requires solitude. Sometimes you must disappear completely in order to remember who you really are, not because you're running away from love, but because you're returning to the source from which all love springs. The mature soul knows when to engage and when to retreat, when to speak and when to remain silent, when to reach out and when to let go. This is not indifference, it is the deepest caring, not abandonment. It is the ultimate presence. In this dying to all fixed ideas about love, you are reborn into love itself, not as something you have or something you lack, but as something you are, not as a feeling that comes and goes, but as the awareness in which all feelings arise and dissolve. The emptiness you once feared becomes your greatest teacher. The silence you once avoided becomes your most trusted friend. The solitude you once ran from becomes the womb in which your true self is eternally reborn. This is the final paradox. Only by embracing your emptiness do you discover your fullness. Only by accepting your aloneness do you realize your connection to everything. Only by stopping your search for love do you become love itself. But even this becoming must be released. Even this realization must be forgotten. Even this love must be allowed to die again and again, moment by moment, so that it can be reborn fresh, alive, uncontaminated by memory or expectation. The sage who knows they are enlightened is no longer enlightened. The lover who grasps their love has already lost it. The one who holds on to emptiness has filled it with their holding. This is why wisdom must be renewed each moment, why truth must be discovered again and again, why love must die to itself, continuously to remain alive. In the end, even the teaching that you are already complete must be abandoned. Even the understanding that love is what you are must be released. Because truth is not something to be known, it is something to be lived. Love is not something to be understood, it is something to be embodied. Wholeness is not something to be achieved, it is something to be expressed. The silence knows this. The emptiness understands. The void that you feared and fled from is the very womb of all creation, the source from which all love emerges, and to which all love returns. In learning to rest in this silence, in making peace with this emptiness, you discover the secret that the mystics have always known. You are not a being having a spiritual experience. You are the spiritual experience itself, temporarily having the experience of being a being. The emptiness you feel right now, that hollow ache in your chest, it's not your enemy. It's your teacher. It's not evidence of your brokenness, it's proof of your wholeness trying to remember itself. Stop trying to fill it. Stop performing for it. Stop seeking others to validate it away. Instead, sit with it. Breathe with it. Let it teach you what it came to show you, that you are not a cup waiting to be filled, but the very water that fills all cups. Not a wave seeking the ocean, but the ocean itself, playing at being a wave. The love you've been seeking in their eyes was never there to begin with. It was always here, in the space between your thoughts, in the silence between your heartbeats, in the emptiness that you've been trying so desperately to fill. You are not loved because you are worthy. You are worthy because love is what you are. This moment, right now, as you read these words, is your opportunity to stop the seeking and start the being, to stop the grasping and start the resting, to stop the performing and start the living. The emptiness you feel is not waiting to be filled. It is waiting to be recognized as already full. Every time someone tells you they love you and you feel nothing, remember, this is not your failure. It is your wisdom. Every time their affection feels hollow, remember, this is not your brokenness, it is your discernment. Every time you feel alone in a crowd of admirers, remember, this is not your curse. It is your calling to remember what you really are. The path forward is not to seek better love, truer love, more authentic love from others. The path forward is to stop seeking altogether and start being what you've been seeking. To stop looking for love and start looking as love. To stop trying to become lovable and start resting in the love that you are. This doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. It doesn't mean pushing others away or becoming selfish. It means loving from fullness instead of neediness, giving from abundance instead of scarcity, relating from wholeness instead of fragmentation. When you love from this place, something miraculous happens. The people who love you back are loving something real. Their affection becomes nourishing because it's meeting something authentic. Their words become meaningful because they're speaking to someone who actually exists, not to a character you've created to earn their approval. If these words have stirred something in you, something that recognizes itself in this truth, then write this in the comments as your commitment to yourself. I am the love I've been seeking.